Hey guys, it's Harrison and welcome back to Awkward Sports History. Today, we're going to talk about the music genre of disco. It's that one music genre that my generation kind of associates with the entire decade of the 1970s, even though it was really only around for a year and a half, 2 years give or take. Because who needs Elton John when you have John Travolta? And for the record, I'm not hating on disco or anything like that. I actually happen to like a lot of disco songs. And okay, I'm already going to address the elephant in the room. Why are we talking about disco? This is an awkward sports history channel. Is Harrison dumb today? Actually, surprisingly, the answer is no, because disco is somehow related to a moment in sports history, specifically Major League Baseball. Okay, so before we get started on today's video, I just want to point out that this is the first fan-picked topic for this channel. I want to give a quick shout out to Jeff for messaging me about this topic. I thought it was absolutely perfect, given that I just did 10-cent beer night a few weeks ago. Yeah, it just seems like a really fun topic. Who doesn't like disco except, people who like The Clash? But on that note, let's get into it. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe down below. Oh, and don't forget to hit the little bell next to the subscribe button too so you get updates on when my videos come out. Cool, let's get into the awkward history of disco demolition nights. Since Bryan Adams long cornered the market on taking people back to the summer of '69, I'm going to take you back to the summer of '79. Specifically July 12th, 1979. During that time, the number one hit single in America was Bad Girls by Donna Summer, and the number one album was also Bad Girls by Donna Summer. Disco was very big at this time in 1979. Let's head to the south side of Chicago, specifically Comisky Park, home of the Chicago White Sox. Now, unlike their brethren to the north, the Chicago Cubs, who are always the indisputably most popular team in Chicago, the White Sox have to constantly beg people to come to games. This is normally the first domino to fall in a disaster story, as you would know from the last video. At the time, those Chicago White Sox were owned by a man named Bill Veeck. Now, Veeck was known for his crazy ideas, to say the least. He really liked an out-there promotion. 30 years earlier, he was the one behind the famous at-bat of Eddie Gaedel. So basically, this stunt was done during a St. Louis Browns game back in 1951 when Veeck was the owner of that team. He sent a guy named Eddie Gaedel up to the plate. What's significant is that Eddie Gaedel was 3'7" and weighed 65 pounds, and yes, he was a grown man. Fortunately, we have a photo of Eddie Gaedel taking an at-bat, so I can just show you right here. Also, one more fun fact about Eddie Gaedel, his number was 1/8, and that had to do with the fact that he was very short. But anyway, back to disco. So Veeck, as usual, is trying to outdo himself, and a promotional opportunity simply fell in his lap. Enter Steve Dahl. So Steve Dahl was a radio host at a station in Chicago, and he became known on air as the guy who hated disco, and was the one who conceived this promotion up. So as July 12th approaches, Dahl and Veeck got together and conceived a plan called Disco Demolition Night. The idea here is that people would bring in disco records. You get in for really, really cheap because you brought the record. They put all the records together in a box, and then they'd blow it up. That's basically the best way to sum it up. This explosion event would happen in between the games of a doubleheader between the Chicago White Sox and the Detroit Tigers. It was agreed upon that admission if you brought a disco record would be 98 cents. This is still 88 cents more than 10-cent beer night, but keep in mind, this is your ticket and then you're good to go. In the week coming up to the event, Dahl went on his radio show and promoted the event like crazy. He wanted people to come to this event. If people did not show up, he felt like he'd be absolutely humiliated, so it had to be a big event. Meanwhile, Bill Veeck is trying to make sure things don't go horribly wrong. While the Cleveland Indians heavily underestimated how many people would show up for 10-cent beer night, Veeck decided to heavily overestimate how many people would show up. While the White Sox and Stahl were hoping that about 20,000 people would show up, Veeck went and got enough security for 35,000 people. However, Even though he heavily overestimated, it would still not be enough security because it ended up being that over 47,000 people showed up to this event. The doubleheader was a sellout, and according to Vec, was the second largest crowd since he had been the owner of the White Sox. This is the part in a movie where someone utters the infamous words, "What could possibly go wrong?" And then everything goes wrong. As you could have expected, people were drunk, people were high on pot, it was the 70s, people were throwing records around like they were frisbees, and a lot of them were being thrown onto the field, pissing off players beyond all repair. They even had to stop the game multiple times because people wouldn't stop throwing objects onto the field. At this point, Bill Veeck must be thinking, okay, you know what? I'm all about crazy promotions, but can we just get this out of our lives and have a normal Game 2 baseball game? There's just one problem if that is what he was hoping for. Cue the music. Oy vey, honestly, poor Bill Veeck. He had no idea what crap he was getting into with this. So after the conclusion of the first game, Dahl showed up dressed up like he's a member of the military and drove around the field on a Jeep. He then parked in the center field area right next to the box that was rigged with explosives and full of disco records. So huzzah, the moment we've all waited for is here. I'm going to show you the video because it's better than telling you, and also thank God it exists.
1, 2, 3, boom!
Well, he's not wrong. It did blow up real good. All those disco records, including the outfield grass, have all been blown to bits. So thinking the festivities are over, the White Sox players go on the field to warm up for the next game. The only problem is they weren't the only people going onto the field. They were joined by a lot of their fellow fans. Like a mob, fans just started running onto the field and the players ran for the hills because who the hell wants to get stuck in this mess? I mean, hey, if you saw what happened with the Indians and the Rangers, can you imagine what's going to happen this time? This is becoming slowly but surely Burning Man in the middle of Chicago. They could not get people to get off the field. Bill Veeck tried going down to the field with a megaphone asking people to stop nicely. Everyone ignored him. They tried putting "please go back to your seats" in big words on the scoreboard, and of course everyone didn't read it because who's paying attention to it? And with a last-ditch effort, they went and they got Harry Carey from upstairs, who was the White Sox broadcaster at the time, and he couldn't do it either. And if no one is listening to Harry Carey, then you've really lost this crowd, dude. And to nobody's surprise, eventually Chicago police had to show up, and that's when everyone finally started to scatter. Because, the police showed up. 39 people got arrested that night, and between 0 and 30 people got hurt. So basically, if you didn't arrest it, you just left saying, hey, I had a good time. As you probably could have guessed, there was no Game 2 of that doubleheader. The Tigers players, and I'm sure the White Sox players as well, did not want to go back out there. So as a result, they decided to postpone the game. But according to the American League, you can only postpone a game due to an act of God, which meant the White Sox had to officially forfeit the game to the Tigers the next day. Meanwhile, Dahl is on the radio talking about how awesome of a night that was, while the White Sox are cleaning everything up and saying, wow, Steve, you know what? You can go to hell. But in the end, the biggest loser of the night was disco. Following Disco Demolition Night, disco sales and its popularity heavily declined. Whether or not that night actually had to do with it is more based on the opinions of those who remember that time. You can't really prove that it caused the death of disco, but you also can't disprove it. It's one of those things. It's still considered that July 12th, 1979 is the death date of disco. RIP. But that'll do it. That'll do it for this episode of Awkward Sports History. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I want to thank Jeff one more time for suggesting the topic of this video. It was a really fun one to go over and research and share with everyone. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.